Level 1. The Rookie. You walk out of the academy with pressed pants and a badge you keep touching because it still doesn't feel real. 24 weeks. Firearms qualifications, constitutional law, use of force doctrine. Your instructors laid it all out like a blueprint. Reasonable suspicion. Probable cause. De-escalation. The law, the way they taught it, was a set of rules that applied the same way to everybody, every time, no exceptions. Your field training officer is a 12-year vet named Hargrove. Day 1. Hour 1. A domestic call in a part of town where half the streetlights are busted and the houses look like they've given up. You expect to run the textbook play. Calm voice. Neutral posture. Let the situation breathe. Hargrove doesn't knock on the door. He hammers it. The guy who answers is 3 drinks deep and already running his mouth. About his girlfriend. About his rights. About whatever. Hargrove steps into his space and stays there. He doesn't lower the temperature. He cranks it up. The guy backs down because that's what drunk people do when a cop gets close enough to remind them how this ends. Back in the car, you bring up what they taught at the academy. Hargrove doesn't mock you. He almost sounds patient. He says the academy teaches you how to pass a test. The street teaches you how to work. Give it time. You'll figure out which one matters. 3 months in, you catch a backup call. Officer needs assistance. Traffic stop gone sideways. By the time you arrive, the driver is face down on the pavement with a split lip. Hargrove's partner is standing over him, calm as a Sunday morning, explaining that the guy tried to run, tried to fight, maybe reach for something. You weren't there for any of it. You pulled up after. But the sergeant wants statements, and the other officer needs yours to land in the same zip code as his. Not identical, just consistent. You write what you're supposed to write. The subject was combative. Force used was appropriate and proportional. You sign it. File it. That's the first time. It doesn't feel like a big moment. Nobody treats it like one. It's just a Tuesday with paperwork. You learn the real rules. Not the ones in the policy manual. The ones that actually govern your life out here. You don't put your partner in a bad spot. You don't give internal affairs anything to work with. The blue wall isn't a metaphor. It's the difference between having backup show up in 30 seconds versus sitting on a hot call waiting 6 minutes while dispatch works the queue. You watch what happens to the guy in your precinct who filed a complaint against his training officer. He didn't get fired. The department doesn't need to fire people. It just makes sure his assignments are the worst ones available, and his backup always seems to take a little longer than it should. He transfers out inside a year. 6 months in, you make your first real pinch. A dealer working a corner everybody already knows about. You put in the time, watched his patterns, did it right. When you move on him, you find product. Enough to mean something in court. Before booking, Hargrove pulls you aside. The guy's carrying $1,200 in cash. Hargrove suggests you log $800. The other $400 is a tax. These people operate outside every rule society has. Why are you the only one playing by the book? It almost sounds reasonable when he says it. You pocket the money. It sits there for 4 days. Then you buy groceries with it. It spends exactly like money you earned. Your conscience puts up a fight for a while. Then it gets tired. Then it goes quiet. Level 2. The street cop. Probation's done. You've got your own sector now, your own car, your own discretion about how to work your block. The department has a policy for everything. Searches, stops, report formats, use of force. Those policies were written by people sitting in climate-controlled offices who haven't worked a beat in a decade. You figure out fast which rules are rules and which ones are suggestions. The neighborhood knows you. The guy at the corner store gives you coffee without ringing it up. The diner on 5th doesn't charge you for lunch. The bar owner on the strip leaves something in an envelope for you at the holidays. Nobody calls it a bribe. It's appreciation, a courtesy. Your supervisors did the same thing when they were on patrol, and they're not going to notice something they spent years not noticing themselves. You develop your regulars. The girls working a stretch on Mercer. The small-time dealers everyone knows by name. Sometimes you arrest them because your monthly numbers need the body count. Sometimes you don't, because they're worth more as ears on the ground than as another misdemeanor that gets pled down to nothing before Christmas. And sometimes you take their product and their cash and let them walk because the paperwork isn't worth your evening. There's a guy named Delgado who runs an operation out of a building on 9th. Vice has known about him for 2 years. The whole precinct knows. But Delgado keeps the right people comfortable, and comfortable people don't authorize raids. It's not a conspiracy. It's just everybody understanding how things work. You're there the night your sergeant decides someone needs a lesson. A suspect in the garage of the station. No cameras back there. The guy had said something about the sergeant's wife. Specific. Ugly. What followed wasn't a temper. It was deliberate. Methodical. Controlled. Two other officers watched from the wall. Nobody moved. Nobody said anything. The suspect didn't file a complaint. People who file complaints get remembered in all the wrong ways. He took it, kept his mouth shut, and did his time. You stood in the doorway and learned something that night. The rules in the policy manual live in policy manuals. Out here, respect isn't something you ask for. It's something you enforce. The system knows this. It just can't say it out loud. Level 3. The detective. Your numbers are solid. Your informants produce. You test for detective and you pass. Narcotics. This is where actual police work happens, or so you tell yourself. Not reactive. Proactive. Building cases. Taking down organizations instead of sweeping corners. Your new partner is Detective Morrow. 15 years in the unit. 3 department commendations. 1 eye inquiry that got closed without charges. He teaches you how investigations actually work versus how they teach it. You don't build from the bottom up. You pick your target, then you reverse engineer the probable cause to get there. You already know who's running things. Everybody knows. But knowing isn't a warrant. So you work your informants. You put pressure on low-level guys until they give you something usable. You make cases against people you don't particularly care about so you can flip them toward people you do. Sometimes your informants are solid. Sometimes they're getting paid by the tip and they know you want a specific answer and they give it to you. Sometimes you use it anyway. The ends justify the means. You hear that phrase a lot in narcotics. Your sergeant says it without irony. You run a big case. 6 months of surveillance, controlled buys, wiretaps. When you hit the location, everything is exactly where you expected it to be. Cocaine. A significant amount of cash. For defendants with records long enough to wallpaper a hallway. There's also an extra 2 kilos in the evidence bag that was not in that apartment when you walked in. Morrow calls it insurance. These guys are guilty, he says. Everybody knows they're guilty. But sometimes a defense attorney finds a technicality. Sometimes a judge throws something out on a procedural issue. The insurance makes sure the conviction holds even if the clean evidence gets challenged. You log everything is found on scene. The defendants get 15 years. They were going to prison anyway. You just made sure the door locked behind them. Level 4. The task force. Your work gets noticed beyond the precinct. The FBI is running a joint task force. Organized crime, money laundering, trafficking across state lines. They need local officers who know the territory and the people in it. You get the call. Federal resources. Federal targets. Federal pressure to produce at a level that makes your old quotas look like a hobby. The cases are layers inside layers. Clean money getting dirty through car washes and restaurants. Distribution networks that cross 3 states. Corruption reaching from the street all the way into city government. Your FBI supervisor is an agent named Calloway. Thorough, smart, annoyingly committed to doing everything exactly right. She goes over your informant payments line by line. She reads your reports twice looking for inconsistencies. She keeps using the phrase evidentiary foundation in a way that makes clear she means it. She doesn't understand that street-level work requires a different kind of flexibility. You adapt. You learn how federal prosecutors need things framed. You learn which details belong in the report and which details, if written down, would create questions nobody wants to answer. The truth is complicated. A good report is clean. Sometimes making something clean means deciding what the important parts are. The task force takes down a major operation. 18 arrests. 60 million in seized assets. A press conference with the mayor standing next to the U.S. attorney. Commendations for the team. What's in the room, but not in the press release. The informant you ran on evidence you borrowed from another case without logging it. The surveillance you ran without a warrant because the window to act was closing and paperwork takes time. The dealer you flipped by making clear his brother was going to have a very bad week if he didn't cooperate. None of that appears in any document with your name on it. The convictions stand. The defendants are guilty. Everyone in that task force knows it. You tell yourself that's what matters. Level 5. The sergeant. You promote. Now you're the one with the unit. 8 detectives. The department wants numbers. Arrest rates. Clearance percentages. Seizure totals. How you get those numbers is not a question anyone at the top is particularly interested in. What they're interested in is not getting asked hard questions. Your job is producing results and making sure your people don't create problems. Some of your detectives are careful. Some cut corners. Your job isn't to stop the ones cutting corners. Your job is to make sure they do it smart enough that it doesn't come back. You teach them what took you years to learn. How to write a report that sounds airtight. How to develop informants who stay developed and don't eventually flip on you. How to testify in a way that's technically accurate and practically misleading at the same time. You don't think of it as corruption. You think of it as closing the gap between what the department demands and what the rules actually allow. That gap exists whether you acknowledge it or not. You're just helping your people navigate it. One of your detectives gets flagged. I is looking at him for lifting cash from a dealer's apartment during a search. He did it. You know he did it. The two officers with him know he did it. But you also know that losing him drops your unit's quarterly numbers below what your lieutenant expects, and your lieutenant is the kind of man who asks specific follow-up questions. You help him prepare for the interview. You have quiet conversations with the other two officers about what they remember and what they're not sure about. The investigation concludes there's insufficient evidence to support the allegation. He stays on. Your numbers stay up. 6 months later, you're in your office, doing nothing in particular, when something lands on you like a slow, heavy fact. You are the sergeant who runs cover for dirty cops. You are the detective who planted insurance evidence. You are the street cop who took a cut off a dealer's cash and called it a tax. You built this version of yourself one small decision at a time. Each one felt like the only reasonable option given the circumstances. Each one made the next one a little easier to make. There was never a moment you looked in the mirror and said, I'm going to become this. There were just 1,000 moments where you told yourself this one doesn't count. And now you're standing in front of a new generation of officers, handing them the same map. The cycle doesn't continue because cops are bad people. It continues because the system rewards what the system rewards, and then acts surprised by what it gets.